At the beginning of time, science lay dormant, but through the eons, we, humankind, have made the use of the reserves at our disposal. Much has been lost due to inanity and greed, but the gains are colossal due to our vision and insight.
Welcome to Science Insight. In this episode we feature a low-cost water drill designed for use in rural Africa, which drastically reduces the cost of sinking a well. Good news for over 1 billion people still forced to drink polluted water. The growth in communications technology has provided opportunities for entrepreneurs all over the world, and Africa is no exception. From internet cafes to computer science courses, the dark continent is well and truly online. London's famous rotating Millennium Eye was stopped and set in reverse as a symbolic gesture of curable blindness on World Sight Day. 100 million people will lose their sight unnecessarily in the next 20 years if governments turn a blind eye. Insurance companies being allowed access to your private genetic tests, it's a growing trend that has the medical and scientific establishments worried. We take a look at the pollution choking our rivers and forests, and the new branch of the United Nations working to reverse the problem for future generations. Once known as the dirty man of Europe because of environmental pollution, Britain is now one of the cleanest countries in the region, thanks to an era of cooperation between government agencies and the public and private sector. Scooping water from a hand-dug well, then trekking miles back to the village. That's a daily chore for millions of Africans, and yet clean water can often be found only a few meters underground. The problem is getting the water out. Drilling a well can be a very costly exercise, but this newly developed hand-operated hammer drill can sink a well at a fraction of the price. Members of a research team at Cranfield University just outside London designed the new tool especially for Africa. The project is trying to get new technology taken up by drilling contractors and small businesses in Africa who can provide water for rural communities, schools and hospitals. As the pipe is hammered through rock, clay and sand to the water below, new sections can be screwed on. All parts of the rig, except the super hard drill bit, are designed to be made or bought locally, removing the need for costly imported spares. And there is no patent on the design. It could take up to 2 weeks to drill a well, depending on the depth of the water table. Then a simple hand pump like this can be fitted to provide a permanent water supply for an entire local village. The drill has already been tested in various sites in Uganda, where the government is partially funding the project. If further field trials in Uganda are successful, other countries are sure to quickly adopt the scheme. While Africa is all too often in the news with images of war, starvation and AIDS, far less is ever reported on how technology is beginning to make its presence felt on the continent. Leslie Jones visits the internet cafe in Yaoundé, Cameroon's capital, to check her electronic mail. Like many of her friends, she finds the internet a convenient way to stay in touch.
I come here almost every day for that. I have messages which come, I send replies, and I come back for more messages.
The growth in communications technology, such as the internet, also provides opportunities for entrepreneurs. This internet cafe was opened recently by a young college graduate and is already a success after only 3 months. Here at the University of Yaoundé, more than 400 students are studying computer science. Unlike in the past, they can now look for jobs outside the public service, and over 100 graduates already have managerial positions. The number of students studying computer science at the university has increased dramatically in recent years, but there aren't enough computers for all of them, and the ones available are often not the most advanced. Students and even professors have to take turns using the internet. Students put up with the inconvenience as future jobs are almost assured. With assistance from the United Nations University, the UNU, the University of Yaoundé has established a computer science library. The UNU has also donated a number of advanced computers in order to enable its Cameroon partners to make the most of information technology. Nothing is changing the world more radically than the computer revolution, and its impact is starting to be felt in even the most remote regions of the world. Cameroon's effort in teaching and utilising this advanced technology is beginning to play a role in the country's development. A wilderness area in North Florida, acres and acres of water, marshes and trees. No condominiums on the beaches, no suburbs, no shopping centres. The birds and animals and fish must think it doesn't get any better than this. Of course, they do have to put up with the neighbours, who can be noisy at times. Fortunately, the neighbours, the Kennedy Space Centre and its launch pad, aren't this noisy every day. And the animals that live in the wilderness surrounding the Space Centre can quickly settle back to their daily lives. In the early 60s, when the Space Centre was being built, it was necessary to have a safety zone set up between the launch pad and nearby communities. That safety zone, 140,000 acres, became the Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge. Over the years, the refuge that was set up for migratory waterfowl evolved into a sanctuary for more than 500 species, including 21 on the threatened or endangered species list, more than at any other refuge in continental United States. The refuge, which enjoys 6 miles of Atlantic Ocean beachfront, serves as one of the most important nesting areas in the country. An estimated 2,000 endangered turtles lay their eggs here. Florida's beaches are becoming so developed there aren't many protected areas where the turtles can nest. The loss of habitat and the fact that the odds of the young sea turtle growing to maturity are about 1,000 to 1 almost guarantee the turtles a permanent spot on the endangered species list. Another endangered species benefiting from the refuge is the manatee, the gentle sea cows that feed in the rivers and canals. About 400 manatees gather here every spring, one of the largest concentrations in the country. Unfortunately, manatees and motorboats don't mix, and the animals are often killed or wounded when they're run over. At Merritt Island, there are programs to help injured or ill manatees recover. Then they're released back into the wild. There's also a 15,000-acre manatee sanctuary that's off limits to motorboats. In late 1967, American alligators came under federal protection when they were almost hunted to extinction. The gators have made a strong comeback and now occasionally have to be relocated away from the working areas of the Space Centre when they pose a problem for workers. In the pinewood trees away from the marshes, another species is recovering nicely, the American bald eagle, symbol of the country. These pictures, taken from a camera mounted on a crane, show the growth of a young egret from a down-covered chick to a robust fledgling over a 5-month period. Eagles are coming back strong in Florida. The state now has 10 times the number found in the first eagle survey conducted in 1973. These eagles would agree, the refuge is a great place to live. If only they could do something about those noisy neighbours. British actors, media personalities, MPs and an inventor all signed up for sight recently on the banks of the Thames River to mark World Sight Day. Their signatures will join thousands of others around the world in a campaign to reverse curable blindness, a condition which afflicts some 45 million people worldwide. The petition will be presented to governments in every country, asking them to invest more in tackling avoidable blindness. In a symbolic gesture, London's giant Millennium Eye was pushed back by Prime Minister Major's daughter-in-law Emma Noble. The giant wheel stopped and began rotating in the reverse direction, symbolising the efforts being made to reverse curable blindness. Commonwealth governments are being asked to donate a little bit more of their overseas aid budgets to charities like Sightsavers to try to tackle world blindness. The tragedy for the world's blind is that a staggering 80% is preventable or curable. Diseases like cataract, river blindness, vitamin A deficiency and trachoma can all be prevented or treated using relatively inexpensive methods. This is where the work of eye care charity Sightsavers International is making a huge difference. They're currently restoring sight to over 500 people a day worldwide. River blindness can be cured for just 50 pence, under $1 US per person, and yet sadly, one child somewhere in the world goes blind every minute of the day. It's no secret that our natural environment is under threat. We only have to look at our rivers to see that pollution is destroying some of our most precious resources. The Nile may be the longest river in the world, but more than 90% of its natural water flow is used by irrigation and lost through evaporation. What does reach the Mediterranean is heavily polluted by drainage, industrial waste and city refuse. According to the World Water Vision's Commission for Water, more than half the world's rivers are being seriously polluted and depleted. The loss of environmentally safe water has had far-reaching effects on the human population. Last year alone, the Commission says, there were more than 25 million environmental refugees as a result of water pollution. That's more than the number of refugees fleeing from war. The Yellow River in China is considered to be one of the worst waterways in the world. Many of its important agricultural reaches ran dry in 1997, and it is extremely polluted. Russia's Volga River basin is also in crisis. Supporting 61 million people, only 3% of its surface water is considered safe for drinking. Huge health problems are also arising in the area because of the accumulation of toxic waste. Even the Thames in London is not immune, with chemicals, car exhausts and street pollution feeding directly into the river. Measuring the impact of this devastation is a daunting task, but one that is essential to the survival of our planet. It is here at the World Conservation Monitoring Centre, the WCMC in Cambridge, that the job gets done. Ecologists collect and process information on all aspects of the living world. They combine data from management specialists, international agreements and locality studies to create spatial representations of our waterways and forests. Their aim is to paint an accurate picture of biodiversity in individual areas. The United Nations recently began flying its flag over the centre, recognising it as an official arm of the UN Environmental Programme. The centre now joins 750 organisations in more than 50 countries already involved in the initiative. All are working towards achieving renewable material resources and energy and sustainable production. The United Nations first put environmental protection on the agenda in the early 1990s, with Secretary-General Kofi Annan warning of a natural catastrophe if political decision-makers ignored the problem. Those at the Cambridge Centre are keen to work in partnership with both the government and the private sector. They believe they can provide policymakers with the environmental information they need to make the right decisions for sustainable management in the future. Environmentalists, students and even tourists can log on to the centre's website to find out about the state of their local river or wildlife. And industry has become a primary target, with businesses increasingly turning to the experts for help in assessing the environmental impact of their work. The ecologists at the WCMC have made the biodiversity of waterways and forests major projects. In their analysis of forests, they're looking at how to improve management worldwide. Even as we speak, forests are being cleared across the globe for logging and agriculture. The impact on the animals, birds and plants in the region can be devastating, with flow-on effects for local communities. By measuring forest quality, biodiversity in tropical areas, and the problems of limited resources, those at the centre hope to shed some light on the best way to handle our forests. Anyone wanting to know the vegetation and land use classifications of a particular area only has to log on. While this new UN agency is a scientific, not campaigning organisation, its efforts in gathering and disseminating reliable data on the world's rich natural biodiversity will ultimately do much to protect our rivers and forests. The Millennium Festival of Women's Work was attended by about 600 women from all walks of life and from all areas of the country. The gathering saw Cabinet Minister Mo Mowlam named the most influential woman of the year 2000, well ahead of all other contenders. Woman of the Year Executive Chairman and television producer Floella Benjamin said she hoped that the gender divide would soon disappear from all walks of life. Women shouldn't hope to be the boss of men, but rather strive to be their equals. The Millennium Festival of Women's Work did away with that gender divide and honoured the former South African leader Nelson Mandela. Russian astronaut Valentina Tereshkova, the first woman in space and the only woman to go into space solo, was given the award for the greatest woman achiever of the century. Well-known writer and broadcaster Germaine Greer sees payment for motherhood as the next big step forward for women. However, most participants believe that payments for child rearing was an issue for future assemblies. Argentinian singer, composer and conductor Jose Cura topped the bill at a concert hosted by the Foreign and Commonwealth Office, or FCO, in London recently. During his recent performances at the Royal Albert Hall, the tenor took some time to visit St John's Hospice in London. He's since lent his voice to the cause to raise money for palliative care. The FCO event was the preview for a worldwide simultaneous execution of 560 performances in 44 countries. This same event raised over £1 million for British hospices last year alone. Hospice, or palliative care, is a special type of care for people whose illnesses may no longer be curable. It enables them to achieve the best quality of life in the final stages of their illness, and also offers support and bereavement services to family members. There are still many misconceptions surrounding hospices, but it's hoped that this worldwide event will help educate and inform people. A better understanding of the makeup of the human genome is shedding light on the role our genes play in deciding how likely we are to develop a range of diseases. Britain is to be the first European country to formally allow the results of tests for a hereditary condition called Huntington's disease to be used by insurance companies. But Dr. Richard Sullivan of the Cancer Research Campaign is worried at the consequences of releasing such information. A person with a cancer-causing gene, for example, doesn't necessarily have to contract the disease. The fear is that if people are reluctant to come forward for testing, this could undermine the progress towards early discovery and successful treatment of life-threatening diseases like cancer. Health professionals are relying more and more heavily on genetic tests taken by family members of people who are diagnosed with certain diseases. If these people believe that having the tests will make them less likely to get bank loans, life insurance policies, mortgages and so forth, they'll be far less likely to come forward, and medical science will suffer badly as a result. Britain's Olympic team returned in triumph from Sydney, weighed down with 11 gold, 10 silver and 7 bronze medals. The 28-medal scoop was Britain's best Olympic performance in 80 years. After a disastrous result in Atlanta 4 years ago with only 1 gold out of 15 medals, Sport England, the country's sporting council, realised more financial support was necessary. In 1997, it instituted a multi-tiered programme of funding into Olympic sports. Britain holds a twice-weekly national lottery draw, and profits are donated to worthy causes, including sports science and sports medicine. 18-year-old Richard Darby-Dowman is training to win the 1,000 metres canoe sprint at Olympic level. He's been brought into Sport England's world-class potential programme, which means the body regards him as a potential medal winner. Richard's been receiving personal grants to buy equipment as well as travel and accommodation expenses for training camps held outside London. He's also just begun a 3-year business degree at Roehampton University. He chose a course and an institution that would allow him to study part-time. The lottery funding will allow him to combine study and training and relieve the need to earn money as well. Richard sees himself at Athens to gain Olympic experience and hopes to win gold in the 2008 Olympics. Britain has only ever won 1 medal at the Olympics in sprint canoeing, so it would be a massive achievement for him to win another. The next test for Britain's athletes at the international level will come at the Manchester Commonwealth Games in 2 years' time. With its long industrial heritage, the UK used to be one of Europe's prime pollution offenders. But thanks to strenuous government efforts, Britain's reputation has undergone a radical and refreshing change. Britain's rivers are at their cleanest since records began. 95% of them were rated as good or fair last year, compared with 92% in 1990. But it's Britain's love affair with the car which is proving the biggest problem to solve. It's both part of their lifestyle and destroying it at the same time. It's now believed that some 80,000 people will die from long-term exposure to road traffic pollution, with problems ranging from asthma to heart and lung diseases and circulatory problems. By a combination of taxation and control, Britain is making giant strides on the pollution front, but it's a problem which is far from solved. The one thing they are sure of is that the future environment of all Britain's children will be dictated by smart decisions taken now.